Connect Forth. Stay connected.
You're entitled to your own opinion. Do you think it plays a big role? This is a safe space. Is that your opinion? Don't stay quiet. We can agree to disagree. I know how you feel. Well, we need to talk about it. Welcome to the pilot episode of We Need to Talk About. In this episode, we will be talking about immigration. It's quite the hot topic now all over the world, with the Syrian refugee crisis bringing it into the light and politicians coming up with new policies that continue to upset most of the world.
These aren't people. These are animals. And we're taking them out of the country at a level and at a rate that's never happened before.
It's these Roma gypsies that are coming. They say they pickpocket and they burgle.
This is a blanket ban, at least temporary, of all individuals from specific countries. And we should point out, Islamic terrorism is, of course, an extreme problem in many of these countries, but Muslims happen to be the biggest victims of that Islamic terrorism in these countries as well.
We will explore if there is a correct answer to the immigration situation, how people feel about the subject, and we'll hear the story of a refugee himself. Stay tuned for it all. What are all the policies on immigration and what do they mean? I travelled to Glasgow to talk to USA-born Glasgow University third-year public policy and religious studies student Nelson Moroukian. As part of your degree, did you ever get any lectures on immigration?
We've talked about it as an aspect of different policies in my public policy course. So yeah, we've definitely gone over different immigration issues, both modern and historical, but mostly, in relation to policy and politics.
Were you ever taught about it from a particular perspective, or was it just kind of like facts and this is just what it is?
It was mostly just factual information about historical kind of policies regarding immigration, but we have talked about the politics of it as well, but my lecturers have been very careful, not to take a side, not to offend anyone's personal views.
So you said you were born in Minnesota. So from an American perspective, how would you describe the current political climate in the U.S. surrounding the topic of immigration?
I would say that right now it's fairly heated. There are a lot of people who feel very strongly about immigration on both sides of the issue. So right now there's just a lot of debate around it. It's still not really clear, what the political course of action is going to be in the United States regarding immigration, but it's pretty contentious. There's a lot of anger and there's a lot of fear as well, I think, in the United States right now surrounding immigration.
How do you think that the public opinion on immigration and immigrants has evolved over time in the US, since beginning days of the United States?
Well, obviously it's changed quite a bit. I think that nowadays there are a lot of people in the United States who have forgotten that they are actually immigrants as well, or that their families and their history is a history of immigration, and they kind of feel like they have ownership of the United States now. And I think that it's important for people to realize that, America and a lot of other countries as well are founded on immigration and accepting different cultures and integrating different cultures. And yeah.
Do you think that Donald Trump's election in the US impacted the world's view on immigration and immigrants?
Yes, I do. I think that Trump's media influence has had a large influence on people's opinion. So when he talks about immigration the way that he does, I think that it definitely influences the way that people think and the way that people understand the concept of immigration. and especially what it means for a country like the United States when he's representing it as such a negative thing without really presenting any of the other information about what immigration has to offer to a country, and also, you know, what good can come out of immigration. And he really only talks about the negative side of it. So I think that with his media presence, it definitely influences the way people think about immigration as a whole.
Do you think that people felt that way even before he got voted into office?
Well, yeah, definitely some people did, for sure. I think that just his openness and his willingness to talk about issues like immigration in such a negative way has maybe validated the opinions of people who already didn't like immigration or thought that it was a negative thing for any given country, but specifically the United States.
Do you think that there is an ideal solution to the world's immigration situation?
No, I don't. I think that it's a very complex issue that has a lot of different influences and a lot of different facets to it, including things like politics and religion, and also, you know, people's personal views, the economy. It's a very vastly complex issue, and I don't think that there's any really one simple solution to it. I think that a big thing would be to help change people's ideas about what immigrants are, just to maybe help people realize that it's not necessarily a bad thing to have immigration to a country, and immigrants aren't always, you know, there to steal your jobs or there to, you know, hurt your family or whatever. Like, an immigrant can be your next door neighbor, they can be a friendly person, they can help you, they can, you know, I think that it would be a good thing to help to change people's mindset. But that's just part of the issue, and there's a lot of different things that would need to change.
That was the US academic perspective. But what about a UK human perspective? Next, we'll hear from Muteea Arif, Glasgow-born and raised daughter of 2 immigrant parents from Pakistan. How has immigration impacted her life and beliefs? Stay tuned to find out.
Both of my parents are immigrants, so I would be considered a second generation immigrant because I was born to 2 immigrated parents. So I've probably got one of the closest experiences to immigration. My dad moved to Scotland in 92, I think, because he just wanted betterment for his family, and he has some family here. He had his dad's brother here and all their family. My dad came here specifically with the idea in mind that this is a country I can make money in, I can get the full services. I know that if my kids grow up here, they will have everything they need to try and make a better life than the one that they both had in Pakistan. And there's such a gap between rich and poor that my dad just didn't want to risk that at all. Like, he was like, there's no way I want to put my kids into that kind of environment where they'd been fighting for education rather than just getting it. I don't know how it happened, but he went back to Pakistan, and somehow him and my mum, they didn't meet, they were arranged marriage, so they got married in Pakistan, and then he, I think, sponsored her. She got to come here, and she came here in 97. Yeah, that's how their story went.
Do you think that race plays a large part in people's acceptance or rejection of immigrants?
I feel like the colour of skin you are kind of depends on the way people, first of all, perceive you. And then, obviously, with the whole immigration thing, they think if you're, like, especially in Scotland, if you're not white, probably an immigrant. And I've had that one too many times. Just because I'm slightly brown, they're like, you must be an immigrant. And I'm like, no.
Born and
raised in Scotland. Hence the heavy Scottish accent. But yeah, like, people, I've been working, and people will stop me and be like, oh, where are you from? And I'm like, what kind of question is this, first of all? But I'm like, yeah, hi, I'm from Scotland. And they're like, no, but, like, where are you actually from? And I'm like, Glasgow? Yay Hospital? And they're like, why are you brown, is what they're asking. And I'm like, both my parents are Pakistani, and I don't have anything against my own, like, race. I don't have anything against my own ethnicity. I'm a proud Pakistani Scottish person, so it's like, I have no problem, but it's just the ignorance of some people that are just like, no, you can't be Scottish at all because you're brown. And I'm like, okay, it does definitely have a big part to play, because some of my friends who are immigrants and are white don't get questioned about where they're from. So I'm like, okay, well, that's fine. I'll get asked it probably every second week, especially if I'm working. I get asked it every week and stuff, and it's usually the weirdest thing is it's usually other foreign people that ask. I'm like cleaning up trash and they like tap me on the shoulder and I have to turn around and they're like, oh, where are you from? And I'm like, Scotland. And they're like, no, but where are you actually from? I'm like, from Pakistan. Yeah, okay, fine. Because they realise that I'm not Arab, so they're like, okay, fine. And I'm like, okay, fine then.
Where do you work?
I worked in Pret-a-Manger. It was something. Everyone there was foreign though. All my colleagues were foreign. I was the most Scottish person there, but because they looked white because they were European, and I looked brown because I was part Asian. I always got questions and they never got questions. They had heavy like accents from I don't know, like Slovakia and Lithuania and stuff, and I was like, okay.
What culture would you like call yourself?
Legally a British Asian, but like growing up I did have a bit of like, you do kind of, if you aren't wholly Scottish, you have a bit of an identity crisis. You're like, what am I? And then I kind of found out that only my parents are from Pakistan. Their parents aren't from Pakistan. They're from, my mum's parents are from Kashmir, which is in between Pakistan and India, and then my dad's parents are from India. So it's like that was even more to add. So I was like, what am I? Like the culture's the same. Like, Indo-Pak culture is, like, the same, so, like, I kind of identify with that, but, like, Scottish as well, so I'm like, what am I? But I feel like I'm both.
What is your take on the current political climate surrounding immigration and immigrants?
Everything that's happening towards immigrants is just, I think, escalated so much because of, obviously, Trump and then Brexit.
Do you think that had a big impact on...
Yeah, definitely. Especially in the way people perceive immigrants now. It's just, before immigrants were kind of like, okay, you were here to get a job or get an education. We kind of get you. You're still not really that welcome, but okay, whatever. And now it's just like, yeah, you're filthy job stealers, get my country. Like, and I'm like, okay, well... I was born here, so both my parents have been citizens, I think, for over 10 years as well now. And my dad will still get comments about leaving the country, especially after 9/11. It was, we got our car, like, windshield smashed in. People wrote on our house, on our, like, physical house, leave us white people alone and stuff, just because we were the only brown family in the community at that time. I do very distinctly remember reading on my door, leave us white people alone. I think it's just escalated so much so that immigrants especially, are scared for their lives. My mum and dad aren't that scared. They have British passports, so they are British citizens, so they're not affected too much. But it's like, you're wondering about the safety of other immigrants, because obviously as an immigrant yourself, you are concerned for other immigrants. Or as just a human, you're concerned for other immigrants, to be honest. You're just like...
You'd hope.
Yeah, you'd hope that you're concerned for the well-being of other humans. How can we lack that? Like... where's the sense in that? Can you not understand their background and stuff? It's the same with some of the like DACA recipients in America. Like they might be deported to a country they've had no idea about. They don't know how to live there, get a job there, and everything. So it's like, it's the same for me. I've always put it in my shoes. I'm like, if I ever get deported to Pakistan, I wouldn't know how to live there. I would be terrified. I know the culture. I know how people are treated there. I know especially how women are treated there. That's like one of the issues I have about the culture there. And I'm like, it's terrifying, because you're going into a world you don't know about, because you've been growing up in the safety of a country you thought you were accepted in, and you thought that you'd be able to live in for as long as you wanted. So that's what's really scary about, I think, politics, is that right now is that they have the power to kick people out of a country that they called home into a country that they have absolutely no idea about.
Do you have an ideal solution to the world's immigration problem?
Obviously, as my parents are immigrants, I think, well, what would happen to them if they didn't have immigration, or what would happen to anyone had their right been taken away from them, i.e. what's happening right now. So I don't think there is a solution, just because of the sole fact that everyone comes from a different country, a background, like a culture, and everyone's leaving their country for a reason. And you can't read at someone's mind, you can't tell from someone's heart if they have good or bad intentions while leaving the country. So this idea that you're going to stop immigrants because they're terrorists is just out of the question. It's like, you make terrorists, they can't be born. from that. Like,
That's true.
terrorists only become terrorists because they have a radical thought about something. They have an extreme thought that takes them to do something so bad. And it's because of a political agenda. And it's like most of the terrorists are made at home. Any terrorists you've probably heard about are American terrorists. Or they might have been born there, but are of that nationality in the end. And it's like, what was their motivation behind it? If you figure out why things happen, you might find a solution, but just by kicking immigrants out of the country, sending them back to their homes, putting that in quotation marks, it's like, it's not a solution. They've left for a reason. Everyone has a different background, a different culture, and a different experience. So based on that, there's no ideal solution.
We've now heard from many corners of the world, but we're missing a few, one of which is Eastern Europe, one of the most conservative places on Earth. To talk about the evolution of her views, here is Enija from Latvia.
I remember in high school there was this girl that got bullied just because she was a bit darker. Her skin color was not the same, was not matching with her classmates. I was not close friends with her. I was not friends with her at all because she was like 7 years younger than me or something like that. And I just remember no one really was helping her, no teacher, no like counselors, nothing like that. She was just left by herself. And at the end, she dropped out because of that. Like the pressure was too big and she couldn't find friends. She couldn't bond with anyone. So she decided to leave just because she was a little bit different. And that's all. She wasn't even that foreign. She was, I don't know, I think Ukraine maybe or something like that. And we have a lot of Ukrainians living in Latvia, but somehow her classmates just didn't let her in the circle at all.
Why do you think that immigrants are so rejected in Eastern Europe?
Honestly, I feel like because they're just afraid that foreigners gonna come in and somehow change for worse everything. They're just gonna destroy their culture, their infrastructure. Somehow they will influence all those things. And also, I know Latvians can be very close-minded and their opinions cannot be changed. And there are like 50% of people tend to just stay in the borders of Latvia and not go further than that. They're not traveling, expanding their horizons. So their mindset is very narrow. And they just keep living with this poisonous thought of different being bad. This situation has been around for decades and even centuries. So if it will change very slowly. And it will change only if people like me who have traveled around goes back and directly influences campaigns and speaks up about the issue. But it's just very funny because... And the thing is, Latvia's population is dying out. We're literally dying. There's like 100,000, probably now the number has doubled, Latvians living in UK and not even planning to return just because our country is so outdated and people who want to expand their thinking just want to get rid of Latvia, which is sad because it's such a beautiful country.
Do you think that race or racism plays a big role in people's rejection or acceptance of immigrants?
Definitely, yeah, because Latvia is very white. Like 99%, not even like 100% of people are just white. I've never seen a black person in a street, and if I would actually be scared for his or her life, because I know that if that girl in my school was bullied just because her skin color was a bit darker, I don't even want to think of a person who's completely different, well, different in quote, being treated on the streets. That's just horrible. And I know that even like my family can be quite racist with like throwing racist comments around while watching TV shows or something like that. Not even thinking about it, just happens automatically. And the worst thing about it is they don't see that it's wrong or that they shouldn't say it, but it's embedded in them so deeply that it's just natural at this point.
Do you feel like you were raised to have a kind of anti-immigrant sentiment?
continuing what I said, it's just natural because all these comments, they flow around and I hear them constantly. So when you're growing up around that, you just start developing the same mindset. But as you grow older, you do realize that is wrong because you start learning about world on your own way, reading books, and internet has helped a lot because you can travel around while being in the same spot from home, from your bedroom. So that helped me a lot. Also, studying abroad has completely changed me in every single possible way, and I'm completely different than what I was before coming here. And like my opinions on immigration have completely changed, and I see it as such a good and beautiful thing to travel around and welcoming new cultures in your own world, because it develops you and you grow in very amazing ways.
Do you think that there is an ideal solution to the world's immigration situation right now?
That's very, very difficult to say because even our most clever minds have not figured that out, which is worrying. But I guess, again, like traveling and seeing world, maybe media showing immigration from better side, because media is a massive influence in all of this, especially when in Latvia we get news from Russia. So damaging. The propaganda is incredibly just wrong in every sense. So changing how media portrays everything, making sure that foreigners, like in Latvia, foreigners can easily move in and travel, because I remember there was a Chinese family living in Latvia. They just moved in a town next to us. And they were all over the place. They were on news, on TV, on radio. They were everywhere. They were so exposed and put under magnifying glass just for being, quotes, different and living in Latvia. It's like, oh my God, guys, there are Chinese people living in Latvia. Is this good or is this bad? I don't know how to feel about it, but let's expose them. Yay, look at us. We have other cultures living in Latvia. We are pro-immigration. No, it's horrible. So yeah, I hope that people will find a way how to change that and make immigration a completely natural thing.
We've heard opinions and facts, but what about hearing the story from the source? To get the rawest story of them all, I got on a plane and I flew to the Czech Republic to talk to a refugee immigrant himself. Next up is the amazing story of Nikos Jaros, my grandfather. Nikos was born in 1941 in a village in the mountains in northern Greece.
I'm the youngest of 8 children, but only my 2 sisters and I are alive today. One of my brothers died of encephalitis aged 15, and another one was killed in the Civil War, on the partisan side, of course.
After the Second World War, Greece was left with a shaky government coalition between the Communist Party and Royalist Greeks, under the careful supervision of Great Britain. The government crumbled quickly after the Communists refused to disassemble their forces, and thus the Civil War began in 1944. However, the British managed to bring it to an end after a lot of fighting and many losses. In 1946, however, the Communists reopened the war after going underground. The British were not able to handle the second wave alone, and so the US intervened after the Communists proclaimed their own government in the mountains in the north of Greece.
So they decided to use napalm to finish this movement off. It scorched everything. The government evacuated villages situated close to the partisan units to cut their popular support. The partisans came for us in the evening. My father was with his unit, and my brother had already been killed. My 2 sisters were also with the freedom fighters, so there was only my mother and I at home. We only grabbed things for 3-4 days, thinking we'd be back soon. They took us up to the hills where they had dug themselves in against aerial bombardment. I was 8 years old.
The Communist Party decided that parents with children will be shipped off to Bulgaria, Romania, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Poland, and East Germany. And all young people would be shipped off to Tashkent in the USSR. First, They all crossed the border into Albania, and then...
We made our escape on a cargo ship sailing from Albania all the way to Poland and further on from there for some people. My parents and I ended up in Czechoslovakia. We were brought to a camp where we got a medical checkup. My father had an injury and my mother got renal colic, so they were both sent to Prague for hospital treatment. Me and other children were taken to children's homes.
The parents were allotted the free areas of Sudetenland, left after the Germans had to leave so that they could replace the missing workforce.
So I was in this children's home. My parents were both in hospitals in Prague, but they didn't know about each other and had no contact with myself. They had no idea about their two daughters' whereabouts either, but they had an inkling of my brothers perishing in the fighting. Eventually, my father was told where to find my mother, but he got there one day too late. She had already left with a group of other Greek refugees for the northern part of the country, where they could settle in properties left empty after the war. They drove my father there in an ambulance, and my parents got reunited in the second village they visited. Initially, the refugees lived together in large groups, sometimes up to 8 families in one room, sleeping on mattresses on the floor, cooking collectively in cauldrons. The food with our fruit and vegetables they were used to eating back home was hard to stomach. My mother wouldn't have any of it.
The parents were to be employed on the newly formed state farms left behind by the Germans.
Indeed, my mother kept looking for me. She and some other mothers received information where their children might be, so they went there only to be told we had been moved elsewhere in the meantime. Since they didn't find us there, they had to go back to Krnov, where they came from, but the name of the place was hard to pronounce, and they ended up hundreds of kilometers away. When they got off the train, they could see they were somewhere else, but the news of lost Greek refugee women got around the place fast and reached one Greek woman who had already settled there and who came to their rescue. After much hugging and weeping, she helped them get on the right train. Eventually, my mother found me in a children's home in Stare Purkartice near Krnov, one of the evacuated German villages in the Czechoslovak Sudetenland. When she arrived, she started to kiss and hug me, but I remember trying to stop her, fearing it will make the other kids jealous. So it was in 1953, when I was 12, that I finally went to live with my parents.
Children were integrated into the local education system, and many succeeded in finishing it, thus offering them a path to joining the Czech workforce all over the country and aiding in finding places to live.
In those days, when you finished your studies, you were given a choice where to go and work. I chose the town of Zlaté Hory, where there was a job at a state-owned farm. Initially, I slept in a room adjacent to my office. About a year later, several block concrete apartment houses were built and 5 apartments were made available for the farm's employees. I took the keys from all 5, went to check them out and chose the one I liked the best. I brought my parents from the old farmhouse in Stare Purkartice and we moved in together. It was in Zlaté Hory where I later met my future Czech wife, Milada.
For many years, it was impossible to get into Greece from Czechoslovakia, so instead, many Czechs enjoyed their summers in nearby countries like Bulgaria.
I never stopped looking into possibilities of going back to Greece, but it wasn't until 1981 that I was able to travel there for the first time. The following 5 years, I went there with my sons every summer. When my wife and I got separated in 1987, I decided to move back to Greece for good.
Some immigrants decided to return back to Greece now that it was allowed. However, it was almost like being an immigrant in your own home country.
I didn't have much of an idea what to do when I arrived. I found a small apartment and started to work with my brother-in-law, who was a bricklayer. I had no experience of such work. I had no idea how to mix mortar or anything. They would tell me, you take this, do this with it, and that's that. I tried my best, but I wasn't getting far. My brother-in-law could do everything that I struggled with for ages in no time. Luckily, soon I got offered a job of a truck driver for a company that ferried electronics between Athens and Thessaloniki. The money was good, so I thought, why not? And agreed to start the next day. But when I got home, there was a message for me to come and start working at a state-owned pharmaceutical company. I didn't know what to do, but my sister said, the transport company may fold any day, but the state factory will last. So I went to work at the factory. Funnily enough, it was the factory that folded, while the transport company is still running today. I worked there for 3 years, and then I opened a canteen there and ran it for 4 more years. When the factory eventually closed, I got a job at the Ministry of Health, working in the archives.
So that was the life story of my grandfather Nikos. But I wanted to know how he felt overall about his experience of being an immigrant in Czechoslovakia. Politically, it would make sense that Czechoslovakia would be a good place to be because it was a communist country itself. But was it so?
I have good memories of Czechoslovakia. The children's home was a great place to get used to being part of a group. And getting back together with my parents and starting to earn my own money was great too. I go back a lot these days, but that's because my 2 sons live there. But I would definitely go and visit even that wasn't the case. I have many friends there who like to see me and I like to see them.
Not only is my grandfather's immigration story important, but so is his current homeland, Greece, because of the immense number of Syrian refugees that have flooded into the country. I asked him what it was like.
Some people here are angry. I know what it's like because I lived in a foreign country, but I understand them too. There was a time when the immigrants came off the boats from the islands and went straight into Athens. There was a square where they all gathered. There were people who offered them rides to any EU country for 3,000 euros. The place was teeming with people. There were no toilets there, so it was a complete mess. It was disgusting. But I felt sorry for them, and I brought them a box of bananas a few times.
Of course, Syrian refugees are not the only immigrants that made Greece their new home.
As regards the Albanians, those I don't count as refugees. They're the worst sort we got here. Thieves, murderers, awful people. And there are some thieves and murderers among the Pakistanis too, but not that many.
But how do the new refugees feel in Greece?
They feel good here. I've talked to them. They say this country suits them well, and they feel at home here.
I wanted to know if, speaking as an immigrant and refugee himself, does he think that there is a solution to the world's immigration situation?
It isn't, because it's been conceived and planned out for a reason. Like the Arab Spring 5 years ago, programmed by the Americans for Islam to take over and topple the incumbent leaders. It had been calm there until then, and now they're all at war.
So what's your opinion on the whole topic of immigration? What did you think of this episode, and would you like to hear more? Get in touch on our Facebook page at We Need to Talk About 2018. Thank you for listening.